Well, happy Friday, everybody. My name is Breaux, and I hope you've had a good week walking with God and selflessly serving other people, because those are basically the two things we were put on this planet to do, to love God and love people. And we have been learning that if we don't download the right kind of stuff into our hearts and minds, we will do neither of those very well. So we've been downloading some song lyrics from God's Word onto the playlist of our minds so that we can do battle with the things that want to keep us from our God-ordained purpose. And these songs are found in a book called Psalms, and most are written by a man named David, and we have seen how there's a pattern to a lot of the song lyrics that he writes. He gets super honest with the truth about himself, and then he lands in the truth about God. And I found that to be such an effective way to process my emotions. And it's a great way to pray with vulnerability and honesty. You just pour out your heart to God, and you land in the truth of his character. Today I want to start a conversation about loneliness. David writes a lot about this throughout the songs, with song lyrics like Psalm 102, verse 7, I lie awake, lonely as a solitary bird on the roof. You ever felt like that? Psalm 25, verse 6, turn to me and have mercy, O Lord, for I am alone and in deep distress. Have you been there? Have y'all ever watched the reality show called Alone? If you haven't seen it, it involves 10 people being dropped into the wilderness on their own. They take 10 pre-selected survival items, and whoever makes it the longest wins. I mean, it's a whole lot of challenges. But there is one major challenge. Now, they didn't call the show Hangry, even though finding enough food to survive is a huge part of why this is such a tough thing for these people to do. They didn't call it grizzly grub or cougar snack, even though there are some very real safety hazards from living in the wild every single minute of every day. They didn't call it blizzards, wind chill, or make your own sunscreen. They called the show Alone. Why? Could it be that despite all the health and safety dangers all around them, the scariest part about competing on this show is the idea of being alone? And for many of us, man, it's the scariest part of life. That feeling of being alone happens after we move to a new city, or you're walking into a new school, or you're starting a new job straight out of college. That feeling after the business ends, or the bankruptcy hits, or you're walking back into an empty house after a funeral, and you feel so alone. And you know what? Loneliness isn't just an empty house. Your house could be filled, and you can still feel alone. I mean, we are the most connected people who have ever walked this planet with social media, FaceTime, Zoom. We literally carry the ability to connect in our pocket everywhere we go. Some of you even carry it into the bathroom with you. Don't deny it. And by all means, never ever call me from there. But technology is a tool you use to connect. It's not connection. Let me give you a clinical definition of loneliness. Loneliness is the feeling of being alone, regardless of the amount of social contact you have. Here's the problem. When you deny the reality of your loneliness long enough, it snowballs, and it becomes pretty devastating. You know, it seems like a lifetime ago now that we all masked up and practiced social distancing, but back before COVID hit, 46% of Americans said that they felt lonely at times. That number skyrocketed to 76%. National and international health experts began describing loneliness as a public health crisis because of its negative impact on our mental health. And here's why it's such a big deal. The need for belonging is the most fundamental human need beyond food and shelter. The need for belonging is the most fundamental human need beyond food and shelter. This is something that contestants on Alone figure out fast. It's why some of them make it less than a day. There are all sorts of interesting new brain scans and MRIs that show loneliness actually hurts physically, like the same as hitting your thumb with a hammer or stepping on a Lego in the middle of the night. That same part of your brain begins to fire off. So if the need for belonging is the most fundamental human need beyond food and shelter, let me ask you, how you doing? If you'd say you're feeling lonely, or you felt that way recently, you're just acknowledging a lack of something God has wired you to have. Most of us inherently know this. It's why you want a best friend. It's why we long for a significant other. It's why your greatest memories, even if you're an introvert, are never ever of you doing anything alone. The first song I ever learned to play on the guitar, I sat down with a huge book of the great hits of the 70s, which dates me a lot. and they had fingering charts over top the song lyrics. It was a song by the Beatles called Eleanor Rigby. Have you heard this song? And I would sit down, I put my fingers on E minor and start singing, Eleanor Rigby, da 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 da. Then I'd switch my fingers to the really hardcore da 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 da. That's how I learned to play. But the chorus of that song was, oh, look at all the lonely people. Where do they all come from? Oh, look at all the lonely people. Where do they all belong? Well, David has a song for that. And it's my wife's favorite. It has been on her playlist forever. And she does what she can to help this come true for everybody she meets. Psalm 68 says this, Father to the fatherless, defender of widows. This is God, whose dwelling is lonely. God places the lonely in families. He sets the prisoners free and gives them joy. He does. And I'd like to dive deeper into this on Monday. But this weekend, I want to encourage you. Surround yourself with people. If you've been withdrawn and isolated, if you felt like a bird solitary on a rooftop, step out of the shadows and let God bring the right kind of people around you into your life. I would pray that you'd show up at a church like Lake Point or another great inclusive community of faith this weekend and let God begin to lift you out of doing life alone. And I'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend.